Imagine coming home early from a business trip, excited to surprise your wife, only to find her laughing in your bedroom with another man. She thought I would break. She thought I would beg. But she had no idea what was coming next. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just started planning. And by the time she realized what was happening, her world was already crumbling. This is a story of betrayal, karma, and the kind of revenge that leaves no survivors. If you love shocking real-life stories, hit subscribe now because this one is unforgettable. I wasn't supposed to be home that night. My business trip was scheduled to last until Sunday, but an early wrap-up gave me the chance to come back 2 days ahead of schedule. Excited, I decided to surprise my wife with a romantic dinner. Her favorite takeout, a bottle of wine, and a quiet night together. I thought she'd be happy to see me, but as I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. The lights were dimmed, but her car was there. At first, I thought she had gone to bed early, but then I heard it. Muffled laughter coming from inside the house. I froze. It wasn't the sound of a movie playing. It wasn't a phone call. It was laughter. 2 voices, low and intimate. My stomach twisted as I stepped out of the car, carefully shutting the door behind me. My hands tightened around the bag of takeout as I moved toward the front door, suddenly hyper-aware of every sound. My pulse pounded in my ears, but I forced myself to move quietly. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside, and the first thing that hit me was the scent. Not of dinner, not of candles or air fresheners, but cologne. A scent I didn't recognize, strong and unfamiliar. The laughter had stopped now, replaced by low murmurs. My heartbeat was a hammer in my chest as I set the food down on the counter, barely breathing as I moved toward the hallway. And then I heard her voice, soft, teasing, and far too intimate. "You're so much more fun than my husband." My grip on the doorframe tightened. "He doesn't even excite me anymore," she continued, her voice carrying through the hallway. "I don't even know why I'm still with him. Maybe it's just easier this way. I mean, financially, it's smart to stay married." A deep chuckle followed, one that wasn't mine. "Yeah." A man's voice responded, smug and confident. "Well, maybe you should finally make up your mind." I didn't need to hear any more. A cold calm settled over me as I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled slightly as I pressed record. Slowly, carefully, I stepped closer, peeking through the small opening in the bedroom door. And there they were, my wife, in our bed, with another man. She was draped across him, their bodies tangled in the sheets, her fingers lazily tracing patterns on his chest. Their clothes were scattered across the floor. She wasn't just cheating. She was comfortable. She was at home in this betrayal like it wasn't the first time. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but I stayed silent, holding my phone steady as I captured the scene in front of me. The way she laughed, the way she touched him. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. I wanted to storm in. I wanted to scream, to tear the room apart, to make them feel the rage that was burning through my veins. But instead, I swallowed the anger. Revenge was better served cold. After a full minute of recording, I stepped back, my mind already moving through the next steps. Bursting in would give them the power. It would turn me into the angry, broken husband. But if I walked away now, if I collected proof, planned my next moves carefully, then I would be the one in control. I left the house just as quietly as I had entered. As soon as I reached my car, I sent the video to a secure folder on my laptop, ensuring that even if she tried to cover her tracks, I had the evidence I needed. Then I drove to a nearby parking lot and sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought she could use me for my money while enjoying another man behind my back. She had no idea what was coming. I picked up my phone and made my first call. To my lawyer. This wasn't just about leaving her. This was about making sure she lost everything. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, the weight of what I had just witnessed settling deep into my bones. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, her body tangled with his, the way she laughed, the way she spoke about me like I was nothing more than a financial safety net. My hands clenched around the steering wheel as the words replayed in my head. I don't even know why I'm still with him. Maybe it's just easier this way. The realization hit me hard. I had been nothing more than a paycheck to her. But if she thought she could cheat on me, humiliate me, and still keep the comfortable life she had grown so used to, she was about to learn the hard way just how wrong she was. I took a deep breath and unlocked my phone. The first call I made was to my lawyer. He answered on the second ring. Didn't expect to hear from you tonight. Everything okay? I let out a low, humorless chuckle. Not even close. There was a pause. Talk to me. I told him everything. The affair. The video. The fact that my wife had openly admitted that she was only staying with me for money. I could hear the shift in his tone. He knew exactly what needed to be done. We're going to hit her where it hurts, he said firmly. If she's staying for financial security, then that's the first thing we take away. But we need to move fast before she realizes what's happening. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. What's the first step? I'll start drafting the divorce papers with adultery as the cause. But before we serve them, I need you to move your assets. Empty the joint account, cancel any shared credit cards, and lock down anything she might try to take. It was exactly what I had planned to do. Consider it done. And one more thing, he added. You said you caught everything on video? Every second of it. Good, he said. That's our leverage. She won't be able to lie her way out of this. I hung up and immediately got to work. I transferred every dollar from our joint account into my personal one. I canceled every single credit card that had both our names on them, leaving only the ones in my name. I changed the passwords to my online banking, ensuring that she wouldn't be able to touch a cent of my money. By the time I was done, it was past midnight, but I wasn't finished yet. I scrolled through my phone contacts until I found the number I was looking for. The other man's wife. I had met her before briefly at a few company events. She had always been polite, warm, the kind of person who believed in her marriage. The kind of person who deserved to know the truth. My hands were steady as I dialed the number. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy from sleep. Hello. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry to call so late, but I think you need to hear this. There was a pause, then a wary, Who is this? I didn't waste time. I'm your husband's coworker, and I have proof that he's been cheating on you with my wife. Silence, then a slow, shaky exhale. What did you just say? I have video evidence of them together. Tonight, in my house, in my bed. Her breath hitched. I could hear the raw pain in it, the shock settling in. Oh my God. I know this is a lot, I said, keeping my voice calm, steady. But I thought you deserved to know. Can you send it to me? Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was something else there now, anger. I forwarded the video. The silence stretched between us as she watched. When she finally spoke again, her voice was shaking, but not with sadness. With fury. That son of a... She cut herself off, sucking in a sharp breath. He thinks he can do this to me? To us? I let out a low chuckle. Looks like he underestimated you. She was quiet for a moment before she asked, What are you going to do? I glanced at the divorce papers my lawyer had already started drafting. Make sure she regrets ever doing this. A pause. Then, I want in. That was all I needed to hear. Together, we spent the next hour putting together a plan. If my wife and her husband wanted to humiliate us, to betray us so publicly, then we were going to return the favor. Only this time it would be on our terms. She promised to handle her end, to make sure her husband got exactly what he deserved. Meanwhile, I was going to do something much bigger, something unforgettable. By the time I got back home, my wife was asleep. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her, wondering if she had even given me a second thought while she was with him. She looked peaceful, comfortable, completely unaware that her entire world was about to collapse. I let out a slow breath and turned away. Tomorrow was going to be the beginning of the end, and I was going to make sure it was a lesson she'd never forget. The next morning, I woke up before she did. I had barely slept, but it didn't matter. I was too focused, too determined to let exhaustion slow me down. Today was the day everything started to fall apart for her. I moved through the house quietly, making sure not to wake her. I brewed a pot of coffee, just like I always did, keeping up the illusion that nothing had changed. As I sipped my cup, I glanced at my phone, checking the messages from my lawyer. The divorce papers were ready. A cold satisfaction settled over me. Everything was falling into place. But before I served them, I had one last move to make. By the time she finally woke up and walked into the kitchen, I was already dressed and ready to leave. She yawned, rubbing her eyes as she leaned against the counter. "You're up early," she mumbled. I gave her a small, unreadable smile. "Got a lot to do today." She didn't think anything of it. She just nodded, reaching for the coffee pot, completely oblivious to the fact that this was the last normal morning she'd ever have. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door without another word. My first stop was at the bank. I had already emptied our joint account the night before, but now it was time to make sure she couldn't access anything at all. I closed the account completely, leaving her with nothing. The banker gave me a knowing look, but he didn't ask questions. This wasn't the first time he'd seen something like this. "Do you want to remove her from any remaining accounts?" he asked. I smiled. "Absolutely." Within minutes, every single financial tie between us was cut. The only money she had now was whatever was left in her personal account, and I knew for a fact she barely kept anything in there. From there, I made my way to my lawyer's office. He slid a folder across the desk toward me. "Everything's in place," he said. "She's going to get hit with this by the end of the day." I picked up the folder, flipping through the pages. The divorce papers were airtight. The infidelity clause ensured that she got nothing. No house, no savings, no spousal support. She had gambled everything on a lie, and now she was about to lose it all. I signed the final documents and leaned back in my chair. "When does she get served?" "This afternoon. We'll have someone deliver them to her while she's at home. That way, she doesn't have time to manipulate anything before reality sets in." I nodded. "Perfect." As I left the office, I pulled out my phone and checked the messages from my newest ally, the other man's wife. She had been busy that morning. She had already spoken to her lawyer, who was moving just as aggressively as mine. She had already frozen their shared assets and was in the process of kicking him out of the house. But the best part? She had a plan for the ultimate exposure, and I couldn't wait to see it unfold. By noon, everything was in motion. I had nothing left to do except sit back and watch the destruction unfold. I parked a few houses down from my own, waiting. My heart pounded as I saw the process server pull up to my driveway. A man in a suit stepped out, carrying the envelope that would shatter my wife's comfortable little world. The moment the doorbell rang, I saw her through the window. She answered casually, her expression shifting from curiosity to confusion as the man handed her the papers. And then I saw it. The exact moment she realized what was happening. Her face drained of color. Her hands started to shake as she flipped through the documents. She looked around wildly, as if searching for some way to undo this, some way to stop the walls from closing in. She couldn't. She tried calling me. I let it ring. She tried again. I ignored it. Finally, she sent a text. "What is this? We need to talk. Call me now." I smirked, tossing my phone onto the passenger seat. She was panicking. Good. But she wasn't done yet. 10 minutes later, another car pulled up in front of the house. His car. I tensed, watching as the other man stepped out. He walked up to the front door, his posture confident. He had no idea what was waiting for him inside. I wish I could have heard what happened next, but I didn't need to, because within seconds, she stormed out of the house, screaming at him. I watched as she shoved the divorce papers into his chest, her face twisted with anger and desperation. I couldn't hear her words, but I could read her lips. "This is your fault." He looked stunned, confused. He tried to calm her down, but she was completely unraveling. And then it got even better. A second car pulled up. I grinned. His wife had arrived. She stepped out with her own folder of papers in hand, her face unreadable. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply walked up to her husband and slapped the papers against his chest. Divorce, lawsuit, financial ruin. His entire body went stiff. He knew. He knew he had lost everything. The confrontation was brutal. My wife turned on him, screaming, pointing, blaming him for everything. He shouted back, but it didn't matter, they were done. And I just watched. Because for the first time in a long time I was finally free. I put my car in drive and pulled away, leaving them to tear each other apart. The best part? This was only the beginning. I drove away from the disaster unfolding in my driveway, a slow smile creeping onto my face. This was the beginning of her downfall, not the end. She thought she could lie, manipulate, and cheat her way through life, using me for security while indulging herself behind my back. But now she had nothing left, and I wasn't done yet. As I pulled into a nearby parking lot, I checked my phone again. The missed calls, the frantic texts, each one more desperate than the last. We need to talk. Please. This isn't fair. We can fix this. At least call me. We can work something out. I ignored them all. Then came the voicemail. I hesitated for a second before pressing play. Her voice was shaking. She was crying. I don't know what you think you saw, but it's not what it looks like. I made a mistake. Okay? But we can get past this. I love you. I don't want to lose you. Please, just talk to me before you make any final decisions. I let out a short, bitter laugh. She still thought she could manipulate me, and she still thought I hadn't made a final decision. I deleted the voicemail and checked my messages again. There was one from her family. Her mother. Please don't do this. She's devastated. She knows she was wrong. Just give her a chance to explain. Of course, she ran to them, playing the victim. I should have expected that. But they weren't there when she laughed in my bed with another man. They weren't there when she said she was only staying with me for financial security. She could lie to them all she wanted. It didn't matter anymore. I scrolled through my contacts and dialed my lawyer again. She's already blowing up my phone, I said when he picked up. He chuckled. Good. That means she knows she's screwed. She's going to try to fight this, isn't she? Probably. But she doesn't have a case. We've got proof of infidelity and a prenup that works in your favor. She can beg, scream, or try to drag this out, but the result will be the same. She's walking away with nothing. I smirked. Perfect. I hung up and took a deep breath. I should have felt something, grief, sadness, anything at all. But I didn't. I just felt free. And I wasn't done yet. That evening, I went out for drinks with her ex-best friend. She had been one of the few people who had actually warned me about my wife years ago. Back then, I had brushed it off, believing in the woman I had married. What an idiot I had been. When I told her what had happened, she didn't even look surprised. She just shook her head and sipped her drink. I hate to say I told you so, she said, giving me a pointed look. I chuckled. No, you don't. She smirked. Okay, maybe I don't. But honestly, I'm glad you found out. She never deserved you. We sat there for hours, talking, laughing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. And then, right on cue, my phone buzzed. Another call. I sighed and finally decided to answer. What? I said flatly. There was a pause. Then a small, shaky breath. Can we please just talk? No. She let out a choked sound, like she was trying to hold back tears. I don't understand how you can just throw everything away like this. I exhaled through my nose. Me? You threw everything away the moment you brought him into my bed. She sniffled. I didn't mean for it to happen. I rolled my eyes. You didn't mean to cheat? You didn't mean to tell him I was just a paycheck to you? Silence. That's what I thought. Her breath hitched. I made a mistake. No, you made a choice. I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm. And now you have to live with it. I love you. I actually laughed. A cold, sharp sound. No, you love what I gave you. And now that it's gone, you're panicking. She didn't deny it. She just whispered, I don't know what to do. I let out a slow breath. Figure it out. Just like I had to. And then I hung up. The next morning, I got a message from her lover's wife. It's done. I didn't need an explanation. I already knew what she meant. She had kicked him out, frozen their assets, started the legal process. And just like that, My wife's exciting new man was now just a broke, homeless loser. I grinned as I took a sip of my coffee. Actions have consequences. I spent the rest of the day cleaning out the house, removing every trace of her existence. Every picture, every item she had left behind. I packed it all into boxes and left them by the curb. And then, just as I was about to walk back inside, a car pulled up. Her car. I crossed my arms, waiting as she stepped out. She looked rough. Her hair was messy, her eyes were red, and she was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. She stared at the boxes, then at me. So that's it? You're just throwing me away. I let out a slow breath, nodding toward the street. Take your stuff and leave. Her lips trembled. You really hate me that much? I shook my head. I don't hate you. I feel nothing for you. And that's worse. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, she finally understood. I turned and walked inside, locking the door behind me. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. The moment I shut the door behind me, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It was done. There was no more arguing, no more gaslighting, no more pretending that things could be fixed. She was out of my life for good. I stood in the silence of my home no longer ours, and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, it actually felt like mine. No more walking on eggshells. No more nagging voice in the back of my head wondering if something was wrong. I had been blind for so long, but now I saw everything clearly. Outside, I heard the sound of her car door slamming. I glanced through the window just in time to see her standing next to the pile of boxes, arms crossed, staring at them like she didn't know what to do next. It was almost pathetic watching her reality sink in. She had spent so much time believing she was in control, but now, she had nothing. Her phone rang. I saw her glance at the screen before answering, her expression twisting into something desperate. It didn't take a genius to know who was on the other end. Her lover. I smirked, leaning against the doorframe as I watched her pace back and forth, voice growing sharper, more frantic. She was arguing with him now, probably realizing he wasn't going to save her. He had his own problems. His wife had kicked him out, locked him out of their accounts, and was coming after him for everything. He had nothing left to offer. For the first time, she was completely alone. And that wasn't my problem. I turned away from the window and walked back inside, heading toward my office. I still had work to do. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about rebuilding. I had spent so many years putting her needs above my own, making sure she was happy, comfortable, supported. But now it was my turn. A few days passed in a blur. I barely thought about her, too busy getting my affairs in order. The house was legally mine. The divorce proceedings were moving quickly. She hadn't contested anything, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. The prenup was airtight. The proof of her infidelity was undeniable. She had no leverage, no bargaining power, no way to twist this in her favor. And then, just as I thought I was free, she came crawling back. It started with a text. Can we talk? Please. Just one last time. I ignored it. Then another. I don't know what to do. I miss you. I rolled my eyes and kept scrolling through my emails. Then a third. I made a mistake. I love you. I actually laughed at that one. Love? She didn't love me. She loved what I had given her. But the final text was the one that really sealed it. I have nowhere to go. And there it was, the real reason she was reaching out. Not love. Not regret. Just survival. She thought I would feel sorry for her. She thought she could manipulate me, guilt me into giving her another chance. I typed out a single response. Not my problem. And then I blocked her. That should have been the end of it. But she wasn't done yet. A week later, I got a call from one of our mutual friends. Dude, have you seen what she's been posting? I frowned, pulling up social media. She had been silent for days, which I had assumed was because she was too embarrassed to show her face. But now she was back, and she was playing the victim. Post after post about how I threw her away, how I didn't even try to fix things, how she had been left with nothing and didn't deserve this. There were vague, emotional captions, pictures of old memories, our vacations, our wedding day, even random candid shots of us together. She was painting a picture of a woman who had been abandoned. I shook my head, more amused than anything. She still didn't get it. She thought if she made herself look pathetic enough, someone would come to save her. But no one was coming. The comments on her posts were a mix of sympathy and skepticism. Some people fell for it, offering words of comfort, asking if she was okay. But others, they knew. Didn't you cheat on your husband? Why aren't you telling the whole story? This is a little different from what I heard. And then my favorite comment from his wife. Maybe you should tell them the real reason you lost everything. That was the last post she ever made. She disappeared completely after that. It's been a few months now. The divorce was finalized. The house is mine, my accounts are secure, and I have no idea where she ended up. I assume she's still trying to scrape together whatever life she has left. But honestly, I don't care. I've moved on. I started traveling again, something I hadn't done in years because she always found an excuse for why we couldn't. I reconnected with old friends, picked up new hobbies, and rediscovered the version of myself that had been buried under years of her manipulation. And then, last week, something unexpected happened. I ran into his wife. It was completely random. A coffee shop in the middle of the city. We almost didn't recognize each other at first, but when we did, we just laughed. We sat down, caught up, shared stories of the chaos we had both survived. And at one point, she leaned back in her chair, shaking her head. Can you believe we actually married those idiots? I grinned. Nope. She smirked. We should have seen it coming. I shrugged. Better late than never. We exchanged numbers before we left. And as I walked away, something dawned on me. For the first time in a long, long time, I was actually happy. And damn, did it feel good.